Entertainment is everywhere. Instant, personalized, almost infinite. With just a swipe or a click, we have access to more stories, more music, more content than ever before. So, are we really in a golden age of creation and consumption? Or was life richer before it was taken over by screens? In other words, is entertainment today making us better or worse? In this episode of Doha Debates, we're joined by experts, global thinkers, each with their own take on this issue.
What a big topic this is. I think we've assumed that having more choices in entertainment and in information is always a good thing, and I think going forward we really need to pay as much attention to the drawbacks.
So modern entertainment is not better for us, as far as I can tell, because it's hijacking our brain's reward pathway. Now we need more and more pleasure in order to feel any kind of pleasure at all.
I think entertainment today is pervasive. It's something that shapes each person and society. The question is, how are we going to make sure that we're shaping it back?
Their perspectives will be explored and questioned in a majlis-style debate, grounded in understanding and a search for truth. Watching over all of this will be a group of university students and recent graduates. They come from different universities in Qatar Foundation's Education City and beyond, and have been preparing for this debate.
We are now in an age where we're consuming far more digital entertainment than we are seeking entertainment outside.
All these between 16 to 25, 28, we're all trying to escape reality because of the things that are happening in the world, and it really affects how we live our lives. Why can't we live a second without Instagram?
The important thing here with entertainment, the responsibility is not necessarily to make you a better person, but to genuinely try to, express some form of the human experience through what you're doing.
After our guests finish their debate, the students will reflect and deliberate before returning with their own insights, ready to challenge, agree, or offer entirely new perspectives. I'm Dareen Abughaida, and this is Doha Debates. Welcome to you all. Thanks so much for your time and for joining us. Anna, if historians were to, if future historians judge us by our entertainment, what would they say?
I think they would be really struck by the ways in which we consume entertainment in isolation. Families are not engaging together in the pleasures of entertainment, but rather each individual family member alone in a separate room with their separate screens, consuming entertainment separately. I think that would be striking.
Nicholas?
I think they'd certainly be struck by the huge number of choices we have at every moment. But they'd also see that we're not very good at regulating those choices. So if you give us an infinite number of choices, we seem to make an infinite number of choices. And that means we're constantly shifting our attention. Our screens have very many different things going on at once. And so we're being entertained by and being stimulated by many, many more things, but our relationship to those things is more shallow because we're shifting our focus constantly.
Marya, what would future historians say about us?
When we think about modern entertainment, one of the things that feels really striking is just the level of noise. Entertainment has now seeped into every aspect because we are in an attention economy. And so in order to get somebody's attention, that has to be something attractive. And so we've kind of made it a norm for things to be entertaining in order for us to actually give them attention. And so really, it's kind of pervasive. And that's why I think it's so important that we don't disengage, because we need to be able to shape it.
Technology is so interesting because it's a drug that we entirely created from whole cloth to mirror the way that our brains essentially work and our neuronal circuits work. So there's no way that it couldn't be addictive because we built it to be that way.
I mean, the only problem I have with calling it addiction in the same way, drugs or alcohol or something are addictive, is that it offloads our responsibilities and our choices onto the substance, which in this case is media, digital media in particular. And I think what we have to realize is that the algorithms that now determine what we're fed, what we look at, are reading our desires, and they're feeding us what we want. So where we need to begin is questioning our desires. Why do we like so much what we're being fed? Because we are complicit in this problem of overstimulation, overabundance, constant distraction.
Nicholas, I think semantics aside, whether we call it addiction or compulsive overconsumption or problematic use, it doesn't really matter to me. What matters is the medium itself is inherently reinforcing for the human brain. It was engineered to be that way. The culpability in this process of our brains being hijacked by digital media is in part in the hands of individual consumers, but also in the hands of the corporations that make and profit from the digital medium itself. It's not one or the other. It's, addiction is always going to be a biopsychosocial disease. I don't think it's wrong to say that digital media is addictive and that digital media is a drug that was designed to be addictive.
I agree that the whole system is designed to encourage compulsive consumption. My only problem with drug metaphor is that it's not a chemical substance we're ingesting or consuming.
But it works the same way.
It's information, it's communication, it's messages from other people often. And this requires us to think of our own responsibility. Why is communication, which is so important to human life and particularly social life, why is it so distorted when it comes through media so that it no longer is a force often that joins us together, but is a force that fragments us or even isolates us? By saying, well, it's a kind of drug, we miss the fact that it's information and communication and messages which are what society is all about.
Yeah, so I'm just going to jump in there because I do disagree with you on that point. We know that people can get addicted to behaviors just as they can get addicted to drugs and alcohol. But I can tell you that in clinical care, we see these cases. It's a minority of users. Most people will be able to self-correct, but we see extreme cases where people are so addicted to various forms of digital media that they are morbidly depressed, suicidal in some cases, unable to function. And they look just like patients who are addicted to drugs and alcohol.
Marya, where do you land on this?
I find this conversation fascinating, and it's a conversation about theory. When I think in a real practical sense, this is here to stay. So how do we engage?
The thing that resonated with me the most was Dr. Anna's comparison between drugs and social media.
Social media acts as a kind of drug because, it's the same idea, right? You look and you kind of get a hit.
Although she was coming from a very scientific standpoint, which is the brain chemicals and how people react, I still see that logic.
I looked at myself and I was like, what do I do when I'm bored or when I'm waiting for something? I'm going to take out my phone. And then I was like, what does someone do when they have a cigarette? They just take it out, or whoever's taking drugs. So I was like, actually, this behavior is pretty similar. In a way, that's how hooked and attached we've now become to our devices, and it's very dangerous.
When I'm done recording all this and I go to the room to get my phone, I can almost physically feel the hit I get from using my phone after hours of not touching it.
Nicholas, are people, do you think, looking for a sense of meaning when they revert to entertainment in all its forms?
Sometimes. I think people are always looking for meaning in general. So we're always trying to figure out how we fit into the world, how we fit into society, how we fit into nature, and that's a meaning-seeking procedure. But I don't think being entertained is always about seeking meaning. Sometimes it's the pure enjoyment of being stimulated. Some entertainment is naturally kind of superficial, and there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to, watch a comedy on TV and expect to get great meaning. It's okay just to laugh, and that's fine. But I do think that the kind of the media environment we've created for ourselves in many ways is impeding us from seeking some greater meaning.
I think that too much entertainment not only impedes us from higher meaning, but actually contributes to our suffering. I base this in large part on what we know about the neuroscience and the pursuit of hedonic reward.
Marya, what about you? What do you think? Are we looking for higher meaning in entertainment?
Entertainment, and especially if we're talking about film and television, tend to be about storytelling. Now, reality television is really different, but if you're talking about scripted kind of content, a lot of that is meaning making. It is actually about finding meaning. Storytelling is how human beings have always made meaning in the world, right? Since the beginning of time. It's actually the way that we understand the world around us. It's the way that we used to document history, right? Our oral traditions and these kinds of things.
You know, for us humans, it's easier for us to find meaning through storytelling. I really resonated with that because as a Muslim, we see that the Quran is the words of God, right? And so the way God conveys so many different ideas and so many different things that we should implement or learn from is through storytelling. It should mean something. It means that we react to it on a much deeper level than we would like to believe.
Nicholas?
I'd like to go back to something that Anna started with, which is the isolating quality of entertainment today. If you think of, in the broad history of humanity, entertainment was mainly communal. You go out and do things, you sit around a fire and tell stories or whatever. And then with the spread of literacy and the spread of printing, you had books arrive and people began to read books, which is a very private way of entertaining yourself. But there was still a balance between private entertainment and communal, where you'd go out, you'd see a show, you'd get together with friends. And then I think over the last 100 years or so, we've seen an ever-increasing emphasis on solitary entertainment. We had the introduction of radio and TV, which brought entertainment into the home. And then we have the introduction of the computer screen and all forms of media and entertainment turning into digital streams through computer screens and then through our phones.
I grew up in two places. I grew up in the city, but during vacation I had to go back to my village, right? In my village, there was only the radio. So there was no forms of entertainment. There was not even a TV. So when the TV first came to my village, every kid in the village used to flock to this one relative's house who had this home TV. And that house was very special to me, I think. But now everybody has TV. And I felt like the former was better than the latter because the things that like when I look at the phones, like when I look at what they're seeing, when I look at what my aunt is seeing, like I feel like it's so unproductive. It's like all gossipy, celebrity gossips.
You think the phone now is the main medium of entertainment. It's this little rectangle that we hold in our own hand and stare at. There's this incredible paradox or irony that we've created this mechanism that is in some ways a social mechanism. People are socializing on one hand more than ever before through their phones, and yet they feel more lonely than ever before. So I think we've lost something as we've shifted ever further away from entertainment as this communal way of coming together toward it being more isolating, more lonely, even though we're using our phones to communicate with other people.
I really agree with that. The ways in which this phone-based medium, which is 24/7 and mobile, allows people to enter into this immersive trance-like state really at whim, anytime, anywhere. When we are using this device, which is nominally intended to connect us to other people, but which really ultimately just is sort of our way to decathect from other people because we can use it to get all of our needs met, right? Our intellectual needs, our emotional needs. Then we no longer need to rely on other people. And of course, so much of human connection is about interdependent neediness. If we didn't need each other, we wouldn't go through the enormous difficulty, work, and complexity of maintaining human relationships, because human beings are a lot of work, right? I mean, it takes communication, effort, time, and now we have a medium where we can just swipe right or swipe left and move on to the next person. And not only is it leading to this epidemic of loneliness, but it's actually contributing to the epidemic of literal aloneness. There are more people who live alone today than at any point in human history, and it's no longer, a dystopian, distant future that we would live in isolated little rat-like cells all by ourselves and communicate with other people only through, the digital devices. I don't know, that just doesn't seem like the right direction to me.
I want us to get to really practically thinking about entertainment, because entertainment is here to stay, right? The world that we live in, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. The question that you're asking is really around number one, how do we engage? But number two, how do we actually see ourselves as being creators? Because inherently, entertainment these days, it's not a one-way relationship anymore. It is actually a two-way relationship between the creator and the audience, right?
There's a danger particularly in social media as an entertainment vehicle, but in other things too, where we've all become content creators. But what is the content we're creating? It's often ourself. We are displaying ourselves, we're sharing pictures, we're making comments, we're making posts. And what happens is our very self, we begin to see as a form of media content that we're broadcasting to an audience. And then we do market research. Oh, how many likes did I get? How many followers do I have?
Market research is crazy.
How do I get more viewers?
Like my photo, guys, I'm posting something.
And there's a danger there that the self becomes itself a form of media content that we're constantly tweaking in order to satisfy the audience.
So one day, I'm randomly scrolling, I see this girl and she's saying, ice cream so good, ice cream so good, gang, 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 gang. And it has so many likes and it became such a huge hit.
Yum, ice cream so good. Yum, ice cream so good. Yum, ice cream so good.
With our current generation, yeah, we are in trouble. We are definitely in trouble. I don't know what it will take. I don't know what kind of awareness needs to be raised, but the current trajectory is pretty concerning. And this is just one of the scary things that people are liking, and it doesn't look too good.
Anna, in our era, it's all about reality TV these days, right? Has entertainment become driven, do you think, by a desire to actually create something lasting, or by ego and self-promotion? This is something that Nicholas touched upon earlier, but what do you think?
I think reality TV is one version of the kind of algorithmic entertainment that people consume now.
But they're real estate,
Oh, yeah. Selling Sunset.
The realtor?
Yeah, Selling Sunset.
The realtor show?
The real estate agency.
Yeah, I've seen that.
The Selling Sunset, it's booming, people love that.
At this point, it doesn't even matter if it's good or not. It's just that people want to be in the state of consuming entertainment, which, by the way, is very similar to what happens with pathological gamblers. They even want to lose because then they have an excuse to stay in the game, right? So that's a very similar kind of thing. I think that almost everybody can relate to, where you're scrolling through a digital medium and you're not enjoying yourself and you wish you could stop, and yet it's very difficult to stop.
I still find myself just kind of scrolling for no reason. I wake up and I scroll, or I'm bored and I scroll.
I start scrolling in my sleep. I feel like my thumb is unconsciously just moving like this, and I'd wake up and I'd see there's no phone in my hand. My thumb was just moving.
It feels inescapable, It's no matter what you do, no matter how happy I am with my life, it's for me, it's not escapism. It's genuinely just I have just this constant urge to be on my phone.
So it's very weird,
But let's say you even manage to, get off your phone and put it down, and then you go out and look for other things to do or other forms of salience or reward or attractiveness. And the problem is that there's nothing there because we've invested all of our time, energy, and creativity into the virtual world, leeching our real life existence of its interest and its salience. And then, the Real Housewives or whatever, that's such an interesting form of entertainment on so many levels. On the one hand, it's interesting at how popular it is, even though it's really not very good, right? These are just sort of not very, how to put it, these are sort of average people, and yet we're obsessed with their lives. And now a very common kind of TikTok video or short form YouTube is people brushing their teeth in the morning, people getting ready to go to work. So it's a kind of degeneration of what people find entertaining, which a generation ago, nobody would have watched that.
Marya, let me ask you this then. Is entertainment creating culture, or do you think culture is reflecting entertainment?
I think that entertainment is part of culture. The way I define culture is kind of this more broad sense of like, you know, our beliefs, our values, our way of life. Culture had a much stronger ability to influence what our entertainment was because there was space and time and the ability to kind of regulate and control. Now I think we're at the flip end where technology is really shaping our culture. How do we see agency in that and start to really think about managing that?
Anna, earlier on, you also spoke about boredom. I wonder if you can just elaborate a little bit on that and tell us the impact that boredom has in kind of the entertainment that we're consuming and the way that we consume it.
We have almost no capacity as modern humans to tolerate boredom of any kind because it's so easy to entertain and distract ourselves. But I feel like that's a real loss. Boredom is really the midwife of creativity.
That's so true.
That's so true,
I agree.
yeah.
So you can't rush art.
I will say that when I talk to Gen Z or Gen Alpha or these kind of like upcoming generations, I often find them more developed and nuanced than older generations are. And I think actually because of their exposure to difference and issues and questions around all sorts of things around identity and experiences and hobbies, that they tend to be a lot more sophisticated. There's something about what you said. I love that about boredom is the midwife of creativity, because I believe that. I really strongly, and I've seen it in like the creative process. There's a way in which potentially original thought is something that requires space and time and reflection for. But I don't think that boredom is necessarily needed for self-development. If you look at younger generations, the level of sophistication that they often have when it comes to kind of conversations about how they've thought about themselves and what is meaningful to them and how they think about the world, because of their exposure and because of the level of discourse that young people are often having, they tend to actually, I think, be way ahead of like where I was at their age, you know?
All right, thank you so much. Well, throughout this debate, our group of students and recent graduates has been carefully listening to your ideas and your arguments. And next, I'll join them as they reflect and deliberate on what they've just heard. And after their discussion, they'll return to share their own perspectives along with questions and challenges. Hey guys! So guys, you heard from our speakers a short while ago on what entertainment means today and whether it's really a powerful sort of cultural force or an escape that's reshaping how we think, how we feel, and how we connect. So Amir, I'll ask you first. Dr. Anna said that boredom, this is how she described it, boredom is the midwife of creativity. What do you think of that statement? And also, do you think that we need to value freedom a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. We can all kind of relate to the feeling of just kind of being really overstimulated. We consume all this stuff on our phones all day, but then we finish the end of the day and then you think, wow, like I did nothing. A day where I feel really satisfied is actually a day where I wake up, clean my room, read part of a book, eat, and then go to sleep. It's a very quote-unquote boring day. I didn't do anything particularly exciting, but I feel much more satisfied, much more fulfilled by the end of it. I feel like I've done something, I've learned something.
Do you guys here feel the same? Yeah, Carl?
I definitely agree with Amir, because I think the key point is coming in touch back with reality, so leaving your screen. I never feel fulfilled, whenever I'm on my phone. As much as I'm consuming so much information, whether it's like self-help videos or whatever it is that they're trying to teach me, I never feel like those are things that are really grounded. So one thing I enjoy doing when I'm not on my phone is stargazing, for example, or just going out for a walk. That's what really brings you back to the world, to really reconnect. And I think that's what we need more.
I think my biggest question when it comes to entertainment is, what are we seeking? And we are making an active choice to seek something. Now, if we're seeking to mentally stimulate ourselves, maybe by reading a book, then that is what we're seeking. And that's the form of entertainment that we want at that moment. But there are moments where maybe I've had long days of studios and I really just want to watch something that's quote-unquote trash, and something that's brain rot and almost consume.
You don't want to use your brain.
Yeah, I don't want to use my brain.
I think.
Yeah, Sarah.
I feel like entertainment is a privilege. I'm privileged
to use entertainment to learn about other cultures, to learn other languages. So I think entertainment is sent from heaven, basically, because I can learn so many languages while watching TV shows. The TV shows I watch, they inspire something in me. The Chinese TV shows I watch, it's very high quality art. It takes me back to 1200s or something. Like, I genuinely feel like I'm not here, and that's a good thing. Entertainment, it really does help, you know, when you're in that space where a lot of times you don't feel support from your own community or people around you. You can really have a connection with specific group or people or TV show or movie through internet.
So look, Sarah just told us what she watches, okay? I want all of you guys to kind of tell me, I'll start with you, Huda, next. What kind of entertainment are you consuming? Give me specific examples.
My form of entertainment always is novels. I personally really enjoy books, particularly historical fiction novels of my region. I really like Kamila Shamsi. I really like Khalid Hosseini. And then if I'm talking about digital entertainment, I always resort back to the old school shows. I know not everybody will agree, but maybe Friends or The Office or The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, like these are shows that I really, really enjoy.
Okay, this side of the room, Wahed, what are you consuming?
I think for me, it's a mix. It just depends on the day. Like on some days, I'm like, what's happening in the business world? On other days, I'm just like a poet. I'm looking at poetry. And one thing to touch on, it's just amazing how the modern era is allowing us to access all these things in our fingertips.
Okay, so how? What about you?
For the most part, nonfiction. I love consuming essays, long form essays or long written essays, mostly like magical, surrealism, that sort of thing.
Okay, Carl?
I would say video games, and they're different genres. So as for me, I believe with each video game, whether it's celebrated or criticized, there's always going to be a lesson. Playing a game like Assassin's Creed, where I get to go back in time and see ancient buildings, use an ancient character and learn about ancient civilizations. Where I play a game like Metal Gear, where I get to learn about the current state of the world, nuclear wars, and the impending dangers of people killing each other. I mainly just use video games because I believe there's a deeper story they tell about our society, how we tell stories, and how you can have that immersive experience.
Amir, what are you consuming?
First, I agree with Carl. I also consume video games. The interesting thing about it is because it's so active, it really helps you kind of put yourself in a world that you wouldn't have otherwise imagined. The other thing is, again, books, nonfiction. I read a lot of history books. When it comes to literature, I try to challenge myself to read more fiction, but I mostly just read poetry, like Arabic poetry, so Nizar Qabbani, Mahmoud Darwish, Nazik al-Malaika. And then for TV shows and movies, I try to get myself to kind of watch more of the quote-unquote classics or longer form movies with, you know, deeper messages. But then, of course, I can't help but watching Friends or something along those lines. So
Friends is deep.
So no mindless TV here, right? That's not what I'm hearing from any of you guys.
Friends is not, like, compared to modern media, Friends is nowhere near mindless. I mean, you know, it's a sitcom at the end of the day, but, you know, like, there's thought put into it for sure.
Kardashians, though, I will say.
So
it depends
like
on
mindless.
the day. But it depends on the day. It depends, yeah.
When you consume this stuff, are you doing it to numb yourself, numb your imagination, or is it actually fueling creativity and wonder? Nada, and tell us what you're consuming.
I like older cartoons. I watched Family Guy maybe a million times. I love Archer. It's really funny. I love these kind of things. But when I'm not mindlessly watching things, I really like crime documentaries and psychological thrillers, things like this. But when I'm reading, I read a lot of nonfiction, a lot of... I have a book that's on a bunch of experiments done in psychology. It's all just psychology stuff because it's like my only interest.
I just wanted to add... specifically because I struggle with anxiety and I have for a while, but when I look at when I'm anxious, I don't necessarily seek forms of entertainment for numbing because my forms of entertainment are usually the ones that slow my brain down. So it would usually be painting or walking or drawing or coloring, things that will slow my mind and my mental processes. It's a conscious thought. I could very well go to social media and I know for a moment I could forget that. I just choose not to look at it from that perspective, and I choose to cater to my thoughts and realize that at this moment, what will help me will be actively seeking modes of entertainment that will slow my mental processes instead of, you know, going into social media or If I look at films, I think any film that has any form of representation of somebody who suffers from anxiety does make me feel very seen. And it almost validates my emotions and experiences. And I don't feel so isolated in that moment. And an example of this actually would be the Inside Out 2. One of the emotions in Inside Out 2 was anxiety.
Hello. I'm anxiety. Where can I put my stuff?
And I remember for the longest time, I couldn't make my parents understand what I was going through. And I made my father watch that film. I said, if you want to really understand how my mind works, I think you should watch it.
Guys, I'm really impressed with the movies and the books and, you know, everything that you guys are talking about. But show of hands, how many of you are watching Love is Blind?
Love is Blind, Habibi.
Right.
I've seen that one.
Whichever version it is.
I have seen it.
You?
I've seen it.
I've seen a few episodes.
Come on, guys, be honest. Show of hands. Show of hands.
I have no idea what that is.
Wahed, I see
I
you smiling.
recommend, guys.
I
recommend.
Clips count.
I have no idea what that is.
No, he watched like something else. What was
Dubai
it?
Bling.
I was Dubai Bling.
Oh,
Dubai.
that's
even worse.
Yes.
It was nice. I
The
liked
other
it.
one,
I liked
the
it too.
Selling Sunset, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so do
He
you
watched
guys...
Selling Sunset. Now that's brain rot.
Okay, fine. So I would say half are watching this reality TV, right? And half are not. So do you guys think, are you using entertainment to find a sense of meaning? Or are you getting it elsewhere? Carl?
I think it always depends with the context. You can find meaning, you cannot find meaning. So once again, because I think I'm the only one who might speak about video games, I usually tend to find meaning behind them, behind the plots, the story, and the characters. But sometimes you don't really want to search for meaning. You're coming from a tough exam on a Thursday. I don't think I want to go back home and search for meaning. I just want to play FIFA and hopefully not lose and just unwind.
And
watch Love is Blind.
No, I don't.
No?
I think in my experience, I believe how you do one thing is how you do everything. You know, I don't think meaning is something that you search for or something to be sought. It's the action in of itself. You know, the fact that you choose to, let's say, passively consume something, right? That's, yes, you might not be searching for meaning in of that thing, but the fact that that's what you're resorting to in of itself is what you deem meaning for you as a person, if that makes
moment,
sense.
yeah.
I feel like that sounds like a...
No, but in that moment, that's what...
yes.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
I'm not sure. I think there's meaning in everything, you know?
Yeah.
So let's say you watch a bad episode, and then in the future, you're going to know what to expect of a good episode. So I'd say there's meaning in everything.
You know, these kind of forms of entertainment where we have books and movies that immerse us in other cultures, I think can definitely help us get perspective on other cultures. Not a lot of people know much about every single culture. You know, we can't say that we know everything about
look at
everybody.
her connection with Chinese
right?
culture. She's from Pakistan.
So we're able to...
I learned half my Chinese too.
Exactly. So we're able to make this, we're able to make these connections with people and understand where people come from when they say certain things. For me, when we're sitting here and we're debating, you know, we're not all from the same country, right? And so I can understand, for example, if somebody has a specific mindset or a specific opinion on something that I might not agree with, I can take into account, okay, well, we have this cultural difference, or we have this language barrier, or we have whatever it may be. Entertainment definitely helps with that because of how interconnected we are. It has its ups and downs, but something that I kind of wanted to draw back from what the guest had said, entertainment is going to stay this way. We're not going to regress in terms of material technology and things like that. So what do we do?
Yeah, Marya said the genie's out of the bottle.
Yeah.
But Soha, go ahead.
I'd argue global entertainment is devolving, and that's because so much of what we consume nowadays is either passive or mindless, to the extent where what was once used as like a training ground for empathy and understanding, i.e. like films and books, that's no longer the case. Entertainment in my family was reading. I come from a family of readers. We love reading books. My dad's a computer scientist, so I grew up with technology all around me. Growing up, like despite the fact that I grew up around technology, my dad would always encourage us to like read more books, like go outside. So I think the fact that the discipline came from him kind of reflected onto the way that I used technology when I grew up.
Guys, this has been a really good conversation, a really eye-opening conversation, I feel. But it's not over yet. So are you guys ready to meet the speakers and tell them what you think?
Yes.
Okay, let's go. So we heard some compelling arguments from our speakers a short while ago, and then our students took time to reflect and challenge and deliberate on the ideas that you guys had put forward earlier on. But I asked the students what they were consuming, what their entertainment vice was, and they gave some pretty eye-opening answers. I'd like to ask you guys the same thing. Nicholas, I'll start with you.
It varies. TV series like The Last of Us. Recently, on the plane, I started watching The Day of the Jackal with Eddie Redmayne. So, typical stuff.
Anna, what about you?
I tend to watch YouTube podcasts about politics.
Marya?
When I was at Disney, I had to watch every piece of Disney content. So I watched nothing except for Disney, which was, you know, Disney owns a lot of things, so it was a lot of content. But more recently, I've been able to just like spend time doing streaming, television, film. I love reading, so I do all of that. And then, you know, Instagram. I don't have TikTok, so, you know.
When you were at Disney, that was work, right?
Oh, I loved it, though. I'm like an actual, like, you know, we own Marvel and Lucas and Pixar, and like that was some of my favorite films and television before I joined. So I loved working on that. I still love that stuff. I just watched, next actually on my list is The Last of Us.
A lot of you guys are nodding along. Are you not surprised by these answers?
Not really.
I mean, I just kind of, you know, just the political podcast thing was just kind of relatable. I always lament the rise of politics as entertainment, but I'm like a massive hypocrite. And so I watch that kind of content. Obviously, I try to keep it, you know, not too kind of inflammatory, but I can't lie, every once in a while I do catch myself watching a Piers Morgan debate. So
likewise. Marya, back to the work that you do. And this is something, in fact, that the students brought up. So I'd like to put kind of their thoughts to you, and perhaps you can just expand a little bit on the issue of representation and diversity, right? A lot of people say, and they're already nodding along, so I know they have a lot to say about this. Some people say there's just not enough representation, not enough diversity in our entertainment. How do you answer that?
My job was actually to try to increase that. Hollywood, which is where I come from, is very much an American business, right? And so it is really shaped by kind of U.S. audiences and also U.S. creatives. There has been a strong push for diversity in the last decade. And you see that not just in terms of like who's actually playing characters, but actually who are the creatives behind the scenes, right? The writers, the directors, the producers, all of that has really drastically shifted. At Disney, one of the things that I was hopeful for was actually to be representative of the globe, right? And to actually show kind of like the true kind of global diversity. However, what is happening now in entertainment, and specifically in film and television, is a massive contraction. So there is one of the things that new media has done is disrupted traditional models of entertainment. And so we had a massive, what would be called like a gold rush for entertainment pre-COVID and after COVID, the golden age of television with streaming platforms. But there has been a huge reduction of content being made in the last year or two, because financially, all of the kind of things that were leading to that gold rush have gone away. For example, people don't go to theaters in the same way that they used to. And so a lot of, I mean, Disney had, I think, $5 or $6 billion movies in 2019. Now it's a studio is lucky if they have $1 billion movie, right? And that's a huge financial difference. A lot of jobs have gone away, a lot of content has gone away, and what that means for diverse storytellers is they're seeing much less opportunity. And so that is a challenge that we're currently facing when it comes to representation.
You know, when I was speaking to the students, you guys were all talking about this issue of boredom and how it impacts or doesn't the entertainment that you consume. Who wants to share their viewpoint with Anna?
I was listening to the guests, and you said something very interesting, that boredom is the midwife of creativity. Myself, I'm a designer. I tend to resort to those resources, whether it's Architectural Digest or Pinterest, not out of boredom, but it's an active quest to seek that out. And I think for me, that's what aids my creativity in that aspect.
That's such a beautiful point. because I don't mean to suggest at all that there's no way to utilize the internet or digital media in a creative way. In fact, it's a wonderful source of creativity if we orient the right way around it. And when I talk to people about how to have a healthier relationship with the technology, one of the tricks and tips that I often talk about is before you actually open your computer and go on to the internet, make a list of what it is you plan to do there. Yeah, so that you don't get lost down the rabbit holes. You know, you're really exemplifying that.
I mean, I think on that, when you kind of intentionally consume media like that, that's very inconvenient for the media companies, right? They don't want you to be doing that. So when we talk about personal agency, for example, in the media, we have to keep in mind that they want you to go on Reels, to go on TikTok, and to just get lost in the feed of meaningless information. You weren't seeking out anything particular on TikTok. You're just kind of scrolling with no real idea in your head.
I actually have a question for our guests here. So you know how the internet or social media nowadays, the new entertainment is designed to be addictive. And there's like this kind of controversy of should it be on the consumers and how they should limit themselves, or should it be on the companies? And you guys did mention the fact that you want to find a solution. You want to reimagine how the future would look like from a more optimistic view. So I'd like to know what your optimistic view would be.
Nicholas, take that on.
My optimistic view would be I don't think government regulation is going to fundamentally change behavior. That doesn't mean there aren't good regulations that I can imagine that could be placed on the companies. But I think ultimately the onus is going to be on behavior of the users. Some younger generation will come along and say, this is oppressive and we don't want to do it anymore. It'll be like the 1960s kind of countercultural, that the whole internet, social media will be seen as a kind of digital industrial complex, and it will be rejected.
I feel like this curated algorithm that's on social media is kind of making us in this loop of just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and not having like a linear line of thought. I feel like society itself is being like more illiterate. I have a question about how we can have some agency in the relationship between us and modern entertainment. Modern entertainment right now is unescapable. I feel like we cannot just opt out of it. Would my generation not be able to be saved? Just a question to both of you guys.
I mean, I think every individual has the ability to regulate their use of anything. The expectation that everybody's online all the time pretty much is now built into society. It's a norm. It's built into all sorts of processes, governmental processes, educational processes. It becomes very, very difficult when everybody has adapted to having everything at their fingertips, unlimited amounts of stimulus coming simultaneously at them at a high speed and high volume, to suddenly tell society, no, we're going to back away from that. Even if society as a whole thinks that that's a good idea, it's very, very hard to do that.
I think we're demonizing media a bit way too much. Of course, there's a problem when they are curating content that is supposed to make you think a certain way. But for some of us, reading is just not it. So if I want to learn about the history of a particular place, sometimes just that little 2-minute video is what I need. In terms of other people who have other ways of learning, media has actually come to help some of us quickly comprehend something.
Well, a lot of what we're talking about kind of underscores that a lot of this comes down to balance. One of the good things about entertainment is that it lets you escape sometimes and go somewhere else, and that's fine. I think the big challenge that we're faced with digital media, and I think this precedes even social media and algorithms, is that the screen is a medium of distraction. Digital media is fine for a lot of stuff, but we have to recognize that other media are probably better for other ways of taking in information and taking in entertainment.
Okay, so let me ask you this. I want a show of hands, right, from everyone here. Is entertainment making us better or worse? Who thinks it's making us better?
Depends.
No, better or worse?
No, better.
Neither. Better.
I would lean towards better.
No, it's better.
Marya, Nicholas,
That's such an
Anna?
unanswerable question.
Yeah,
It's not a yes or no.
You're talking about
Entertainment could be going
entertainment
for a walk.
as it exists today.
as it exists today, is it making us better If you believe so, raise your hand.
Specifically modern entertainment.
Then I take my hand back.
I'm taking my hand up.
Okay. And who thinks it's making us worse? Is entertainment making us worse?
My vote was modern entertainment bad.
I voted that entertainment is good, very good, actually. My hand was the highest.
Because in as much as I will preach and tell people that, no, you can actually use it to empower yourself and to make yourself a better human being, let's be honest, most people won't do that.
I think if entertainment wasn't here, literally I wouldn't be who I am right now. Me and my friends or like my colleagues, we work in humanitarian sector basically. It's very mentally draining and it's very traumatizing to an extent. And in these moments, I know that entertainment really helps. It takes you to a safe space.
Sundus, you raised your hand and then you said, I'm taking my hand down. Why?
Because I think when you use it as a tool, it has made the world better in many ways because it has helped us learn more, connect more. If we're not being mindful with it, it can very quickly go from being useful to disastrous.
In the US, we don't have political leadership that understands technology as it is today. And you see some of the farce that happens when, you've got like these tech CEOs that go in front of Congress and have conversations that show like a lack of basic understanding of technology. The reason I bring that up is because I do think that if you look at the history of technology and of entertainment, government has played a really important role. Companies then follow the rules. There's no incentive usually for companies to regulate themselves and to say, oh, for social benefit, we're going to do this. They really just care about money. At the end, and I'm speaking like as somebody who sat inside a company, individuals will care, but ultimately the way that a company is set up, it is really financially driven, right? So government, it's really the role of government to do regulation. But in order for that to happen, we need people to be advocates to help governmental agencies actually understand what is going on in terms of technology, how it's impacting us socially, and then to propose and pass regulation that can actually do that. And why we haven't seen this, my personal perspective, is because technology has so rapidly accelerated that society is no longer able to keep up in the way that it used to be able to regulate. And so what I would say to those of you who are young people is, how can you start to like communicate that to them and help them encourage passing legislation that can protect you and the generations to come?
Marya, what will you be taking away from the conversation with the students?
I think I'm terrified about digital media. I want to sit with the question of social media as a drug and addiction. And then the other thing I would say is I do think that we need to have a much deeper conversation around solutions. There's societal things, there's individual things, but I'd love for there to be more of a conversation around this and for there to be actual experimentation around it.
Nicholas, what will you take away from this conversation with the students?
It certainly made clear to me that, sometimes we speak in generalities of society or of a particular generation, but you always have to remember that there's individual experience, which can be very different from the generalizations. And I think what we've heard from many of these young people is that their individual experience does not fit a general mold, but is their own experience. And we have to remember that when we're talking about any broad societal trend.
Okay. What about you, Anna?
What I will take with me is the nuance that you all pushed for in this dialogue, insisting that we look at both the positive and the negative, which I think is very mature and sophisticated of all of you, and so I applaud you for that.
Well, that brings us to the end of this episode of Doha Debates. Thank you to our speakers, thank you to our students, and all of you for watching and listening. We've explored bold ideas, challenged assumptions, and we've opened space for understanding, with respect and curiosity at the center. But the conversation doesn't end here. Now it's your turn. What do you think? Share your thoughts, your questions, your own perspectives. We're listening.
The next step,